Ida for skipping my brother's wedding because his fiancée excluded my wife from the guest list. My brother James is getting married next month, and what should have been a joyous family event has turned into a nightmare. Weddings are supposed to bring families together, but this one has managed to do the opposite, unraveling bonds that once seemed unshakable. The issue? His fiancée, Emily, didn't invite my wife, Lisa, to the wedding. It wasn't an oversight or an unfortunate misunderstanding, it was deliberate, and that deliberate exclusion has shaken the foundation of my relationship with James and the fragile peace within our family. To understand how we got here, you have to know a little about Emily and Lisa. They're as different as two people could be, but they've always managed to maintain a polite, if somewhat strained, relationship. Emily is the kind of person who thrives in quiet spaces. She has a reserved demeanor, speaks thoughtfully, and prefers the predictability of a small circle of trusted people. Lisa, on the other hand, is the exact opposite. She's vibrant, magnetic, and has a knack for drawing people out of their shells. Whether it's strangers at a cafe, old friends at a party, or family members at gatherings, Lisa's energy is infectious. Her charm can light up a room, but it can also feel overwhelming to those who don't crave the spotlight. Last year, during a family vacation, their contrasting personalities collided in a way that set the stage for this current disaster. We had all decided to spend a week at a tropical resort to reconnect and unwind. The setting was idyllic white sand beaches, turquoise waters, and endless sunshine. It should have been the perfect escape, but instead, it became a crucible for simmering tensions. From the moment we arrived, Lisa did what Lisa does best. She dove headfirst into the experience. She organized games on the beach, invited other vacationers to join us for dinner, and even managed to get my stoic father to participate in a karaoke night, something I had thought impossible. At first, it seemed like everyone was having fun, but Emily's discomfort became apparent as the week went on. She began withdrawing from group activities, opting instead to sit by herself with a book or take solitary walks along the shore. When Lisa tried to include her, inviting her to join in a card game or accompany her to the spa, Emily declined with a tight-lipped smile that barely concealed her irritation. Lisa noticed but chose to let it slide, not wanting to create conflict. I thought it was just a clash of personalities and didn't read too much into it at the time. The tipping point came on the final night of the trip. We had arranged a farewell dinner at the resort's outdoor restaurant, complete with fairy lights and live music. Lisa, as always, was the life of the party. She gave a heartfelt toast, thanking everyone for the memories we'd created and even cracking a few jokes that had the whole table laughing. Everyone, that is, except Emily. She sat stiffly, her expression unreadable, her glass untouched. Later, James pulled me aside and told me Emily had been upset by Lisa's behavior throughout the trip. He said she felt Lisa was attention-seeking and had made the vacation all about herself. I tried to defend Lisa, explaining that her outgoing nature wasn't meant to overshadow anyone but to bring people together. James nodded but didn't seem convinced. Looking back, that conversation was a warning sign I failed to heed. It was the first indication that Emily's feelings toward Lisa went beyond mere indifference. But I didn't think much of it at the time. I chalked it up to personality differences, assuming that whatever tension existed would fade with time. After all, family dynamics are rarely without their quirks and friction points. I believed naively, as it turns out, that we'd move past it, that the shared history and love within our family would smooth over any rough edges. Fast forward to today, and my optimism feels like a cruel joke. Emily has made it explicitly clear that Lisa is not welcome at her wedding. When I first heard this, I thought there must have been a mistake. Surely, no one would deliberately exclude a sibling's spouse from such an important day. But when I confronted James about it, he confirmed my worst fears. It was Emily's decision, he said, and he didn't want to push back because it's her day. Her day. The phrase landed like a slap in the face, as though the sanctity of her wedding was reason enough to disregard my wife, our marriage, and the respect owed to family. I tried to reason with James, pointing out how hurtful and inappropriate this exclusion was. Lisa and I have been married for 5 years. She's not some passing acquaintance or distant relative. She's my partner, my family. To exclude her felt not just disrespectful but outright cruel. James, however, remained unmoved. He accused me of making a big deal out of nothing, insisting that I should respect Emily's wishes for the sake of family harmony. His words felt like a betrayal, a choice to side with his fiancée at the expense of the bond we'd shared all our lives. It wasn't just James who was torn by the situation. Our parents were equally divided. My dad, ever the pragmatist, sided with me. He said it was absurd to exclude Lisa and that James and Emily were being unreasonable. Family comes first, he told me. If they can't understand that, then they're the ones destroying harmony, not you. My mom, however, took a more conciliatory stance. She urged me to go to the wedding, arguing that it wasn't worth jeopardizing my relationship with James over one day. She even suggested that Lisa should understand and let it go for the greater good. Lisa, for her part, has tried to be supportive, but I can see how deeply this has hurt her. She's always been generous with her love and kindness, even in the face of Emily's frosty demeanor. To be excluded so blatantly has left her feeling disrespected and undervalued. She's told me she would never have done something like this if the roles were reversed, and I believe her. She's not the kind of person to hold grudges or play petty games. Seeing her pain has put an enormous strain on our marriage. She feels like I'm not standing up for her enough, and I can't blame her for thinking that way. Now I'm caught in an impossible dilemma, torn between two loyalties that feel equally important yet completely incompatible. James is my only sibling, and I've always thought we were close. Skipping his wedding would undoubtedly hurt him and could irreparably damage our relationship. But at the same time, how can I attend without Lisa? How can I look her in the eye and tell her she's less important than maintaining a fragile peace? This isn't just about one day, it's about standing up for what's right, for the principles that underpin our marriage and family. As the wedding day approaches, the weight of this decision feels unbearable. Each passing day brings a new wave of anxiety, regret, and anger. I don't want to ruin my brother's wedding, but I also don't want to betray my wife or compromise my values. The question gnaws at me endlessly, am I the one being unreasonable, or is it James and Emily who are letting selfishness dictate their actions? And if I do make a stand, what will the fallout be? Can our family ever recover from this rift, or is it destined to leave scars that will never fully heal? Fast forward to now, and Emily has made it clear she doesn't want Lisa at her wedding. It wasn't a suggestion, not a passing comment that could be smoothed over with a little understanding and compromise. It was a cold, firm decision, as immovable as stone, and its implications left me reeling. When I first heard the news, disbelief was my immediate reaction. It had to be a mistake. Surely, no one would intentionally exclude a sibling's spouse from one of the most important days of their lives. But as I stood in my brother James's kitchen, staring into his guilt-ridden eyes, the truth became undeniable. It wasn't a mistake. It was Emily's deliberate choice. When I confronted James about it, hoping he might reveal some hidden misunderstanding or miscommunication, his response only deepened the wound. He admitted it was Emily's decision, and in a tone that carried more exhaustion than conviction, he told me he didn't want to push back because it's her day. Her day. Those words, so casually thrown out, felt like an assault. Her day? What about the rest of us? What about the bonds of family, the respect for the relationships that have shaped our lives? What about Lisa, who has done nothing to deserve this treatment? James's reasoning felt weak, like he was grasping at straws to justify his silence. It's her day, he repeated, as if that single phrase absolved him of any obligation to stand up for what was fair and right. Then he added something that made my blood boil. You should respect Emily's wishes and come to the wedding alone, for the sake of family harmony. Family harmony. The words rang hollow in my ears, a cruel irony given that this decision was tearing the family apart. What kind of harmony demands the exclusion of someone who has been a part of this family for years? What kind of peace requires such blatant disrespect? I was stunned. Lisa and I have been married for 5 years. She isn't just my wife. She's my partner, my confidant, and an integral part of my life. She has celebrated with this family, mourned with this family, and shown kindness even when kindness wasn't always reciprocated. Excluding her feels like a slap in the face, not just to her but to me as well. It's a message that says, loud and clear, she doesn't matter. You don't matter. And coming from James, my only sibling, someone I've always considered not just a brother but a friend, it cut deeper than I thought possible. When I told James the first wouldn't attend without Lisa, his reaction was swift and sharp. He accused me of being dramatic, of blowing things out of proportion and turning his wedding into a battlefield. He claimed I was trying to punish him for something out of his control, as if Emily's decision were some immutable force of nature he was powerless to oppose. You're letting Lisa's hurt feelings ruin my wedding day, he said, his tone a mix of frustration and exasperation. The words hit me like a punch to the gut, not because they were true, but because they revealed how little he seemed to understand the depth of what he was asking me to do. This wasn't about Lisa's hurt feelings, though they were certainly valid and justified. It wasn't even about the wedding itself. It was about the principle of the matter, about what it meant to stand by my wife and honor the commitment we had made to each other. It was about respect for her, for me, and for the sanctity of family. And yet, James couldn't or wouldn't see it that way. To him, my refusal to attend without Lisa was a petty act of defiance, a selfish refusal to prioritize his happiness over everything else. Our conversation devolved into a tense standoff, neither of us willing to budge. I could see the hurt in his eyes, the disappointment that I wasn't willing to compromise for the sake of his big day. But all I could think about was Lisa, sitting at home, trying to put on a brave face even as she wrestled with the sting of rejection. How could I betray her like that? How could I walk into that wedding, smile for the cameras, and pretend everything was fine while knowing she was at home, excluded and hurt? The fallout from that conversation rippled through the family like a shockwave. Our parents, always the emotional barometers of any conflict, quickly took sides. My dad, ever the pragmatist, was firmly in my corner. You're absolutely right to stand by Lisa, he told me. James and Emily are being unreasonable, and they need to see that family is about inclusion, not exclusion. His support was a balm to my wounded pride, but it also fueled the growing divide. My mom, on the other hand, took a softer, more conciliatory approach. It's just one day, she said, her voice tinged with pleading. Don't let this ruin your relationship with James. Sometimes you have to be the bigger person. Her words, though well-intentioned, felt like a betrayal. Be the bigger person? How was attending the wedding without Lisa an act of maturity? It felt more like an act of submission, a willingness to overlook a profound injustice for the sake of avoiding conflict. And yet, her plea echoed in my mind, adding to the growing storm of doubt and uncertainty. Was I being stubborn? Was I letting my pride cloud my judgment? Or was I, as I believed, standing up for what was right? Lisa, for her part, tried to be supportive, but I could see the toll this was taking on her. She has always been someone who wears her heart on her sleeve, and the pain of being excluded was etched into every line of her face. She told me she would support whatever decision I made, but I knew she was hoping, praying that I would choose her. And how could I not? She was my wife, my partner in all things. To leave her behind, to attend that wedding without her, would feel like a betrayal of the vows we had made to each other. As the days passed and the wedding drew closer, the tension in our family reached a boiling point. Every conversation seemed to circle back to the same question: would I go or not? James, desperate to salvage what he saw as his day, called me repeatedly, each conversation more strained than the last. He begged, he reasoned, and finally, he resorted to guilt, accusing me of letting Lisa come between us. "You're my brother," he said. "You're supposed to have my back." His words stung, but they also revealed the flaw in his reasoning. How could he ask me to have his back when he had so clearly turned his on me and Lisa? Meanwhile, Lisa and I found ourselves grappling with the strain this conflict had placed on our marriage. She tried to hide it, but I could see the doubt creeping into her eyes, the unspoken fear that I might choose James over her. And I, caught between loyalty to my brother and the commitment I had made to my wife, felt like I was being torn in two. Each option seemed to carry its own set of consequences, its own unique pain. And so here I am, standing at the crossroads, paralyzed by the weight of this impossible decision. On one side is James, my brother, my flesh and blood, pleading with me to set aside my pride for the sake of his happiness. On the other is Lisa, my wife, my partner, who deserves nothing less than my unwavering support and loyalty. To choose one feels like a betrayal of the other, and the thought of the damage this could do to our family, to our future, keeps me awake at night. The wedding is only weeks away, and the clock is ticking. Each day brings me closer to the moment of truth, the moment when I'll have to make a choice that could change everything. I don't know what the future holds, but one thing is certain: whatever decision I make, the ripple effects will be felt for years to come. Will I look back on this moment and feel pride in standing by my principles, or will I be haunted by the fractures this choice has caused? Only time will tell, but for now, all I can do is brace myself for the storm that's about to come. Our parents are divided, each taking a side in a conflict that feels less like a disagreement and more like a slow unraveling of the bonds that tie us together. My dad, steadfast and pragmatic, insists I'm right to stand by Lisa. "This isn't just about a wedding," he said during one of our recent conversations. "This is about respect, about setting boundaries. If James and Emily can't see how wrong this is, they'll only keep pushing." His unwavering support has been a lifeline, a steadying force in a sea of uncertainty. But even his confidence can't erase the gnawing guilt I feel when I think about the growing chasm between me and James. My mom, on the other hand, is the voice of caution, pleading for peace above all else. "It's one day," she said, her tone heavy with emotion. "Is it really worth destroying your relationship with your brother? Weddings are stressful. People say and do things they don't mean. You can't let this one moment define your family." Her words lingered in my mind, planting seeds of doubt that have taken root despite my best efforts to ignore them. I can see her perspective, and part of me wishes I could agree with her, but every time I imagine walking into that wedding without Lisa by my side, it feels like a betrayal too heavy to bear. Lisa has been deeply hurt by the whole ordeal, and her pain is palpable in every quiet moment we share. She tries to hide it, putting on a brave face and telling me that she'll support whatever decision I make. But her eyes tell a different story. They're shadowed with doubt and sadness, a reflection of the exclusion she feels. "I would never do this to Emily," she said one night, her voice trembling with frustration and disbelief. "If the roles were reversed, I would make sure she felt included. I don't understand how someone can be so cold." Her words cut deep because they're true. Lisa has always been the kind of person who goes out of her way to make others feel welcome, even when it isn't easy. To see her treated like an outsider, like she doesn't matter, is infuriating. And yet, as much as I want to fix this, to somehow make everything right, I feel powerless. The strain on our marriage is undeniable. She feels like I'm not standing up for her enough, and I can't shake the feeling that no matter what I do, someone will be hurt. The days have turned into a blur of tension and indecision. Every conversation with James feels like walking through a minefield. He's growing more frustrated with each passing day, accusing me of prioritizing Lisa over our family. "You're being stubborn," he said during one particularly heated argument. "This is about more than just you and Lisa. It's about showing up for your brother. For your family. Why can't you see that?" But that's the problem, I do see it. I see the impossible choice laid out before me, the way this decision feels like tearing myself in half. If I go to the wedding without Lisa, I'll be betraying the most important person in my life, the woman who has stood by me through everything. If I don't go, I risk shattering my relationship with James, possibly forever. And caught in the middle are my parents, each pulling me in a different direction, each convinced they're right. One night, as Lisa and I sat in the quiet of our living room, the weight of it all became too much. She finally let the dam break, her tears spilling over as she confessed just how much this situation had hurt her. "I feel invisible," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Like I don't matter to them. Like I'm not even a part of this family." Her words broke something inside me. I had known she was hurting, but hearing her say it out loud, seeing the pain etched into her face, was almost too much to bear. I wrapped my arms around her, holding her as tightly as I could, and for the first time, I felt a sense of clarity. Lisa isn't just my wife, she's my family, my partner, the person I chose to spend my life with. And in that moment, I realized that standing by her isn't just the right thing to do, it's the only thing I can do. But that clarity didn't make the decision any easier. The next day, I called James to tell him I couldn't attend the wedding without Lisa. His reaction was immediate and explosive. "You're being ridiculous," he said, his voice rising with anger. "You're letting her come between us. This is exactly what Emily was worried about, you always putting Lisa first. It's selfish." Selfish. The word hit me like a slap, but I refused to back down. "This isn't about putting Lisa first," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "It's about respecting her, respecting our marriage. I can't just leave her behind like she doesn't matter." James didn't see it that way. To him, my decision was a betrayal, proof that I valued my marriage more than our relationship as brothers. And maybe, in a way, he was right. But what he couldn't or wouldn't understand was that this wasn't just about Lisa. It was about standing up for what was right, for the principles that hold a family together. The fallout was immediate. James stopped answering my calls, and when I tried to reach out through our parents, the response was cold and distant. My mom, ever the peacemaker, begged me to reconsider. "He's your brother," she said, her voice cracking with emotion. "You only get one. Don't let this destroy everything." But by then, the damage was already done. The wedding came and went, and I stayed home with Lisa, doing my best to make the day feel like any other. But the weight of what I had lost hung heavy in the air. James didn't reach out after the wedding, and neither did Emily. The silence was deafening, a stark reminder of the rift that had been carved into our family. In the weeks that followed, I found myself questioning everything. Had I made the right decision? Could I have handled things differently? The guilt and doubt were almost suffocating, but every time I looked at Lisa, I knew I had done what I had to. Our marriage, our partnership, was worth fighting for, even if it came at a cost. And yet, the absence of James in my life feels like a phantom limb, a constant reminder of what I've lost. I don't know if we'll ever be able to repair the damage, if time and distance will heal the wounds or only deepen them. All I can do is hold on to the hope that someday, he'll understand why I made the choice I did. Until then, I'll keep moving forward, one step at a time, with Lisa by my side. At the same time, James is my only sibling, and I've always thought we were close. Memories of our childhood flash through my mind, building forts in the backyard, sneaking out late to stargaze, and confiding in each other about our hopes and fears. Those memories are a sharp contrast to the tension between us now, a reminder of what we stand to lose. I know skipping his wedding will hurt him. It will feel like a betrayal, and there's a chance it could permanently damage our relationship. Part of me wonders if I should just swallow my pride and go for his sake. Maybe, just maybe, that would be the better path, the one that preserves what's left of our bond. But another part of me rebels against that idea. This isn't just about one day, it's about standing up for what's right, for the principles that guide my life and my marriage. Lisa is more than my wife. She's my partner, my equal. To abandon her in this moment, to leave her behind while I celebrate with people who don't value her, would be a betrayal far deeper than skipping a wedding. It would mean compromising not only my values but the very foundation of our relationship. And how could I look her in the eye after that? How could I expect her to trust me if I didn't stand by her now, when it mattered most? The days leading up to the wedding were a blur of anxiety and second-guessing. Every phone call from my parents felt like a minefield. My mom was relentless in her attempts to convince me to go. "It's not about agreeing with Emily," she would say. "It's about being there for your brother. Families make sacrifices for each other." But her words only deepened my resolve. What kind of sacrifice was she asking for? My pride? My dignity? My wife's sense of worth? The cost felt too high, too wrong. My dad, as always, was on my side, but his support didn't come without its own weight. "You're doing the right thing," he told me one evening when I called to vent. "But doing the right thing doesn't mean it'll be easy. Sometimes it's the hardest path there is." His words gave me strength, but they also reminded me of the storm that was coming. I was about to make a choice that could change everything. Lisa remained quiet through most of it, her support steadfast but her pain evident. She never once pressured me, never once told me what to do. But I could see it in her eyes, the hope that I wouldn't leave her behind, the fear that I might. It tore at me, seeing her caught in the crossfire of a situation she didn't create but was suffering from all the same. The night before the wedding, she broke her silence. "You don't have to stay home for me," she said softly. "If you feel like you need to go, I'll understand. I don't want to be the reason you and James fall apart." Her words were generous, selfless, and entirely unnecessary. I had already made my decision. "You're not the reason," I told her. "And I'm not going. Not without you." The morning of the wedding dawned heavy with emotion. I sent James a text, a final olive branch, explaining why I couldn't come. I told him that this wasn't about punishing him or Emily, that it wasn't about choosing sides. It was about standing by my wife and what I believed in. I told him I loved him and hoped that one day he would understand. Hours passed without a response, and the silence was deafening. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from family members, some scolding me, others trying to play mediator. My mom called 3 times, each voicemail more pleading than the last. But I ignored them all. I spent the day with Lisa, trying to keep things as normal as possible, but the weight of what was happening hung over us like a storm cloud. When the evening came and there was still no word from James, the finality of it hit me. He had chosen to remain silent, to let the distance between us grow. It hurt in a way I hadn't expected, a deep, hollow ache that settled in my chest. I had always thought our bond was unbreakable, that no matter what happened, we would find a way back to each other. But for the first time, I wasn't sure. The days after the wedding were some of the hardest I've ever faced. James didn't reach out, and I didn't know how to bridge the gap. My mom was furious, accusing me of selfishness and saying I had let pride ruin our family. My dad, though supportive, seemed weighed down by the fallout. And Lisa, though grateful for my support, struggled with the guilt of feeling like she had caused a rift between me and my brother. Weeks turned into months, and the silence from James remained unbroken. The rest of the family moved on, their lives continuing as though nothing had happened, but I felt stuck, trapped in the aftermath of a decision that had no easy resolution. I tried reaching out a few times, sending texts and emails, but they went unanswered. It became clear that James wasn't ready or willing to talk. But life has a way of moving forward, even when you feel like it can't. Lisa and I focused on our marriage, on rebuilding the trust and connection that had been tested by this ordeal. We found strength in each other, in the shared understanding that while the choice had been painful, it had been the right one. Nearly a year later, I received an unexpected email from James. It was short, almost curt, but it was the first olive branch he had extended since the wedding. "I've been thinking about everything," he wrote. "I'm still hurt, but I want to talk. Let me know if you are willing." My heart raced as I read his words, a mix of relief and apprehension flooding through me. I didn't know what the conversation would bring, but the fact that he was reaching out was enough. When we finally met, the tension was palpable, but so was the unspoken bond that had always connected us. We talked for hours, rehashing the events leading up to the wedding, sharing our perspectives, and acknowledging the pain we had caused each other. It wasn't easy, and it didn't fix everything, but it was a start. James admitted that he had felt caught between loyalty to Emily and his bond with me, and in his effort to keep the peace, he had underestimated how deeply his decision would hurt me and Lisa. I admitted that my refusal to attend had been as much about principle as it was about frustration and anger. We both had regrets, but we also shared a desire to move forward. In the end, our relationship wasn't the same as it had been before. There was a scar, a lingering reminder of what we had been through. But scars, I've learned, are a testament to survival. They don't erase the pain, but they show that healing is possible. Lisa and I emerged from the ordeal stronger, more united than ever. And while my relationship with James is still a work in progress, I hold on to hope that one day, we'll fully find our way back to each other. Because family, I've realized, isn't about perfection. It's about resilience, about the willingness to face the hard truths and keep going. And that's a lesson I'll carry with me for the rest of my life.